When you're cooking, it's really important to know the difference between essential ingredients versus non-essential ingredients. And what this means is that an essential ingredient has very specific functions within a recipe. And some examples of this might be that butter has a specific function, flour has a specific function, salt has a specific function, baking powder and baking soda have specific functions. And if you change those up and don't know what you're doing, it can really impact the final recipe. But non-essential ingredients don't really have that kind of thing going on with them. They might affect the flavor, which can be really fun, but it's not going to really affect the final shape or color or anything like that of the actual recipe. The ingredients act independently of each other. So for this particular recipe, we are going to be making a strawberry whip sensation dessert, and this is a recipe that is super easy to make, and it's also a really good example of this. So the essential ingredients for this one are the cornerstone of the recipe. They're kind of like the building blocks of it. So it's a sweetened condensed milk, a tub of whipped topping of your choice. It can be whatever brand, it doesn't really matter, but it is essential that it's whipped topping and not whipped cream or anything like that. And then a tablespoon of butter. And then the non-essential ingredients are going to be 4 cups of strawberries divided, 8 Oreos, which is a cookie, and then a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And those we can play around a little bit with in order to make our final product be something different. To begin, we're going to do the original recipe, and it's called Strawberry Whip Sensation. And the reason we start out with the original is so that we know how we can vary the other versions. So to start out with, you're going to crush your Oreos and set those aside. You can do this in a Ziploc bag and crush those up, or you can just do them in a bowl with your fingers, but you just want to get them kind of crumbled up into smaller pieces. Then you're going to mash 2 cups of the 4 cups of required strawberries. And the easiest way to do this is either by using a whisk, and that mashes it up pretty well, or you can use a fork. I've also had people use pastry blenders or potato mashers. That works pretty well. But your goal is to just get it smaller and pureed and to where it'll mix in really well with the rest of the recipe. Frozen strawberries also work really well for this recipe. Then you want to mix the mashed strawberries with a can of sweetened condensed milk, and you can do that with a rubber spatula, but just mix it together until it's well combined. Then you are going to fold in the 2 cups of the whipped topping. So not the entire container, but just 2 cups of it. And folding in is using that little up and over motion that you're seeing there, but that is so that you don't deflate the whipped topping. Then you're just going to pour it into a plastic wrap lined loaf pan. The original recipe calls to line it with foil, but I have found that if you use the foil, it's just really hard to peel all the little pieces off of there, so plastic wrap just works a little bit better than foil does for this recipe. And you might need to use 2 pieces of plastic wrap crisscrossed rather than just using 1 big piece. Then you're going to melt your tablespoon of butter and put it in with your crushed Oreos, and then stir that together. And then you just sprinkle that evenly over the top of the strawberry mixture, and this is going to be the bottom crust in the final product. So that is you're going to want to cover that pretty well and get it all the way across that bottom area. Then you're going to cover it with plastic wrap and place it in the freezer 6 hours or overnight. And make sure you cover it really well with that plastic wrap to make sure you don't get any of those freezer flavors in there. So the first variation of the theme is going to be a banana pudding version. And so the essential ingredients are staying the same, are condensed milk, Cool Whip, and butter. And then we're changing up this a little bit with sliced bananas. It ends up being about 1 cup per banana, 16 vanilla wafers, and then a block of cream cheese for our ingredients. And our process is kind of the same. You're going to start out by crushing your vanilla wafers up, and you can do that in a Ziploc bag or in your bowl again. Then you're going to mash your bananas with a whisk or a fork. These you might want to leave a little bit more whole than the strawberries, just because usually in banana pudding the bananas are a little bit more solid. So you might want to mash some and then leave some whole. And then you're going to mix your cream cheese and your condensed milk together. But because the cream cheese is pretty dense, we're going to not use the rubber spatula and you're going to use a hand mixer to whip that in, just because it's going to combine it a little bit easier and faster. Then you're going to fold in the mashed banana. We're not using the hand mixer for this part because that's going to just pulverize the bananas completely. And so you just fold those in. And then you're going to fold in your 2 cups of the whipped topping again. And you are keeping the rest of that whipped topping to use later on, so don't get rid of that. And the folding is going to just make sure you're not deflating that whipped topping once again. Then do the same thing that you did with the strawberry one. You're going to place that into a plastic lined loaf pan. And just spread it out, and you may want to drop it a couple times just to make sure it gets into all those corners. Then you're going to combine your vanilla wafers and your melted butter and then spread that over the banana mixture. If you want to, you can put a few vanilla wafers in the rest of the mixture as well. The good thing about this recipe is it doesn't really matter too much how you do things, but it ends up working really well if you mix a few vanilla wafers in with the rest of the mixture. Then you're going to cover that with plastic wrap and then freeze it for 6 hours to overnight. Our next variation is going to be blueberry cheesecake, and this one ended up being one of my favorites. And it's pretty simple. It does work a little bit better with frozen blueberries, and having them frozen at the beginning, don't thaw them out. So you're going to use 4 cups of blueberries and divide those out again, saving 2 cups of them for later on. And then 4 sheets of graham crackers and then a block of cream cheese, and then the essential ingredients are staying the same. We're going to be following the exact same procedure as we did for the banana pudding, where you mix in your cream cheese with your hand mixer and then fold in your fruit gently. And you want to be careful with your blueberries because you don't want to bust them. Blueberries bust very easily, and this is going to end up looking a little bit purple, but that's okay. It ends up being kind of pretty. And then get that into your loaf pan, and your graham cracker crust is going to go on the bottom. And this one ends up being pretty incredible. Variation number 3 is going to be like a brownie batter version. So for this one, you're going to be adding no fruit. And so instead of the fruit, we're going to be putting in some cocoa powder. And this can vary a little bit based on how dark you want your brownies. I used about a 1/4 cup and then a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. And then your cookies are once again going to be Oreos, like your strawberry dessert version. So the procedure is going to be pretty similar. You're just going to crush up your Oreos like you did in the beginning in your plastic bag or in your bowl. And then you're going to mix your cocoa powder into the condensed milk with a hand mixer. And the reason that you need to use the hand mixer is that it's a little bit harder to work that cocoa powder into the condensed milk with a whisk or anything, and it needs a little bit more agitation with the hand mixer. So you're going to fold in the whipped topping after that, and then after you've got that completely worked in, you're going to add in your chocolate chips. I prefer the mini ones for this just because the larger ones get a little bit tough in the freezer. Then you're going to put that into the pan and then add your Oreos with your melted butter on top of it and then cover it and freeze. So variation 4 is kind of a takeoff on the Girl Scout cookies or the Thin Mints or grasshopper cookies. And so it's a chocolate mint combination. So our essential ingredients are the same. And then we have the 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, 16 chocolate mint cookies, which can be grasshoppers or Thin Mints or anything else if you can't get Thin Mints. If you look in the grocery store, they're generally called grasshoppers. And then a half cup of the chocolate mint candies, usually they're called Andes mints, and then just kind of chop those up into smaller pieces. So you're going to crush up your chocolate mint cookies and then just follow the same procedure as you did for the brownie batter. And we are using the hand mixer to mix in that cocoa powder. And your chocolate mint candies come in. You can also add a little bit of peppermint flavor to this as well if you'd like to. You don't have to, but it does add a little bit of extra. And then your thin mint cookies go on top. So for variation 5, this one ends up being a lot like a chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. And so the cookie dough just kind of gets worked in. And this one's one of the easiest ones to make. So our non-essential ingredients for this one are going to be 10 chocolate chip cookies and then 3/4 of a cup of cookie dough chunks. And what I did for this one is I just got cookie dough from the grocery store and then crumbled it up and froze those chunks so they would be separate. And that made it a little bit easier for them to hold up while they were being mixed in. So you start out by crushing up your cookies. And you can use store-bought or homemade cookies for this. It would be a lot better if you used homemade cookies for sure. If you make your own cookie dough for this though, you want to use heat-treated flour and pasteurized eggs because it's not going to be cooked. And we are not adding anything into this. You're just folding the whipped topping directly into the condensed milk, and then after those two things are combined, you add your cookie dough pieces. And then adding that mixture into your pan and then just putting your cookie and butter mixture on top. And then just finish it like the rest. For decorating, basically you're just going to frost it with the remaining whipped topping that you have. So you're going to turn it out onto a plate, and that whatever cookies are on there are going to be on the bottom, so that's your crust. And make sure you remove all of the plastic wrap from there. Like I said, the original recipe called for foil, but the foil just is very, very difficult to get off. And then you are going to frost it with the remaining whipped topping. And then to indicate what is inside of it, you can decorate it with whatever ingredients there are. So for the strawberry, you would use strawberries. You could put, for the grasshopper, when you could put mint. For the banana, you could put banana. For the cookie dough, you could put some chocolate chip cookies. So just do something to indicate what's on the inside of it. And that will help you out. And in the original recipe, it tells you to reserve out a little bit of the thing to add to garnish the outside. Thank you so much for watching Mixing with Merks. You may have noticed that this is a video that you've already seen on our channel. This is actually a recreation of the original video that I made, the very first YouTube video. And so I'm redoing this one with voiceovers. I'm using the same footage, but I felt like it needed voiceovers and a little bit more editing skill. And so thank you so much for watching this again, and hopefully the editing and some graphics have helped this video be a little bit better than the original.